Hello, and welcome to Spiritual Calisthenics. Today, on January 29th, we commemorate the removal of the relics of St. Ignatius the God-bearer. So just a little bit about the saint. St. Ignatius was a disciple of St. John the Theologian and a confessor of the apostles, and he became the second bishop of Antioch after Evodas. He wrote many epistles to the faithful, strengthening them in their confession and preserving for us the teachings of the holy apostles. Brought to Rome under Trajan, he was surrendered to lions to be eaten, and so finished the course of his martyrdom about the year 107. The remnants of his bones were carefully gathered by the faithful and brought to Antioch. He is called God-bearer, as one who bore God within himself and was aflame in heart with love for him. Therefore, in his epistle to the Romans, chapter 4, imploring their love to not attempt to deliver him from his longed-for martyrdom, he said, I am the wheat of God, and am ground by the teeth of the wild beast, that I may be found to be the pure bread of God. St. John Chrysostom wrote a homily in honor of the translation of this saint's relics. So, to go over him a little bit, if we look to St. Paul's letter to the Hebrews, chapter 10, verse 32 through 38, Brethren, recall the former days, when after you were enlightened, you endured hard struggle with sufferings, sometimes being publicly exposed to abuse and affliction, and sometimes being partners with those so treated. For you had compassion on the prisoners, and you joyfully accepted the plundering of your property, since you knew that you yourselves had a better possession and an abiding one. Therefore do not throw away your confidence, which has a great reward, for you have the need of endurance, so that you may do the will of God and receive what is promised. For yet a little while, and the coming one shall come and shall not tarry, but my righteousness shall live by faith. So what is this saying? This is almost the antithesis of wealth theology, which is the idea that somehow we will be made rich by our faith. We'll all be millionaires. When we look to the lives of the saints, well, actually, they suffered. They gave up almost everything to follow after Christ. And so St. Ignatius, the God-bearer, is an example of this, as someone who was willing to endure much, in fact, to be torn apart by wild beasts, so that he could be saved. So that he could give his life at martyrdom to Christ our God. And of course, it was voluntary. As we see from Daniel, the prophet, when you are as holy as someone like this, the animals, their inclination is to be gentle like kittens. It was because St. Ignatius allowed this to happen, not run away from his martyrdom when he was exposed as a Christian. And we see this also when we look to the Gospel of Mark, chapter 9, 33 through 41. At that time, Jesus and his disciples came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he asked them, What were you discussing on the way? But they were silent, for on the way they discussed with one another who was the greatest. He sat down and called the 12, and he said to them, If anyone would be first, he must be last of all and servant of all. And he took a child, put him in the midst of them, and taking him in his arms, he said to them, Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives not me, but him who sent me. John said to him, Teacher, we saw a man casting out demons in your name, and we forbade him, because he was not following us. But Jesus said, Do not forbid him, for no one who does a mighty work in my name will be able soon after to speak evil of me. For he that is not against us is for us. For truly I say to you, whoever gives you a cup of water to drink because you bear the name of Christ will by no means lose his reward. In other words, the greatest are those that are willing to be least. Instead of looking for power, instead of looking for glory, we should be looking to see how can we serve our fellow man. And St. Ignatius, by bearing in his heart the love of Christ, after all, he followed in the footsteps of St. John, who is the one that speaks about this. And if we look to another place where the disciples were trying to one-up one another, it was James and John who were asked by their mother to ask Jesus to allow them to sit one on his right and one on his left in the glory. And so this is something that was causing division in the disciples. And so Jesus Christ says this so that there might not be divisions, that we might be unified in serving one another and loving one another, and to truly understand that if we want to be great in the kingdom of heaven, we must be last of all, be willing to be servant of all, so that we may be saved. Hope you've enjoyed today's spiritual calisthenics. May St. Ignatius, the God-bearer, intercede for all of us. Have a blessed and wonderful